This is the Big 550 KTRS. I am Paul Harris. Talking with James Randi, the amazing Randi, whose amazing meeting will take place next month. It'll actually be a celebration of a reasoned life, that life being Randi's, because at age 86, I guess, Randi, you've decided that even though you've traveled the world and spoken everywhere, it's just gotten to be a little bit too much. Is that why this will be your last TAM?
I'm not too sure about that. Perhaps if I find myself in the vicinity of Las Vegas at the right time of the year, I may just drop by, knock on the door. But no, I've got to cut down on a lot of my travel, Paul, because I'm just not as firm as I used to be, you know.
I understand.
I've led a rather athletic life and everything. I'm in good shape for a guy 86, certainly.
Right.
And still going up and down stairs as many times as I can. I think I'm just cutting down on a lot of the travel stuff because it's rather difficult. You know, the time zone changes and things like that are a little harder to take.
And the days are kind of long there at the amazing meeting because they're filled up with so much remarkable stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of remarkable stuff, let's talk a little bit about this documentary, which, as I mentioned, is available now on iTunes and Google Play and is hitting theaters across the country as well after playing in multiple festivals and getting multiple awards. It's called An Honest Liar, and it's a look back at your life done by Tyler Measom and Justin Weinstein, who I know traveled with you and followed you around. And having never been the subject of a biographical documentary like this, first I got to know, what's it like to have these two guys with you all the time?
Oh, well, they weren't with me all the time. I got to turn in and sleep some of the nights, you know.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, they were sort of out of the way. They were very, very careful not to interfere with my life too much. But they were there, and they did, I think, a wonderful job of it. I'm certainly very satisfied with the film, and there were some rough spots in it, rough times and such. But I did very well with it. I really liked the job. My partner Davey Pena and myself are very pleased with the results, and we're celebrating the fact that the film has been such a great success all over the country, and as a matter of fact, around the world.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear the response. It's funny because I've known you for so long. I know some of the stories that are in there, although I didn't know all of them, but I know a lot of stories that are not in the movie, and I can't help but wonder how many more hours, because the movie's only 90 minutes or so, how many more hours of stuff could they have put in if they wanted to be comprehensive about your amazing career?
Well, we sort of figured we could have done two more movies, but one at a time, I always say. And by the way, Paul, I must, before I forget, and we are running out of time, aren't we all?
Yes.
You mentioned something that really got my attention. I just made a note on the pad in front of me here on the desk that we surely should talk about, I think. That's the anti-vaxxers.
Yep.
I am very concerned with this, Paul, because, Louis Pasteur came up with a grand idea, as you probably know, and so many other scientists in the medicine business, they came up with a wonderful idea. It's called vaccination. Mm-hmm. And vaccination works. It works beautifully, not perfectly. No, none of these things work perfectly, but they work very, very well. Millions, literally millions of lives of people all over this blue planet have been saved by vaccination. And for these semi-celebrities out there, part-time actors and whatnot, who will come up on TV and say, oh no, it causes autism, it poisons people and such, the Penn and Teller term, the BS term, that serves to describe that perfectly, I think.
Yeah, Andrew Wakefield is one of history's great villains, as far as I'm concerned, because he's the guy who faked the study that linked autism to vaccines. Faked being the operative word there. There is no actual connection. And it drives me crazy, and I talk about it and write about it myself on a regular basis. In fact, I was distressed this morning to see that in Spain, diphtheria is back. We eradicated this disease 30 years ago.
That's right.
But because people aren't vaccinating their children and are destroying herd immunity, we already have one 6-year-old in the hospital and 8 more in isolation in Barcelona, Spain, because of the anti-vax movement.
Well, I don't know how Wakefield ever thought that he would get away with it. Science is absolutely unforgiving of this sort of thing, and I'm glad that they got to him not quite in time. Actually, he had published the articles and such, and they were in scientific journals, only to be withdrawn later on, of course. But by that time, the whole anti-vax movement was in full swing, and it's still active. And this is the thing that the JREF, the James Randi Educational Foundation, is going to fight as much as we possibly can, though it's a little bit off center for the subject of our particular interest.
Yeah, well, you know as well as I do, if you have a splash of a headline on a front page saying that so-and-so is a murderer, and then 3 days later there's a correction on page 14 that says we spelled the name wrong, or it wasn't him, or he wasn't a murderer, no one sees the correction. They all saw the front page, and the problem with the internet is all of this garbage that's been spewed by these anti-vaxxers from Wakefield to McCarthy and on and on and on, that keeps getting spread as if it's true, because no one sees the corrections and the debunking.
Exactly. And I'm very angry about it, and I'm very concerned about it, and I'm glad that you are, too.
Well, that's what brings me back to the question I asked you earlier. Aren't you frustrated about the lack of, or the lessening of faith in evidence-based information?
Well, yes, of course. It's something that is on my mind all the time, Paul, and is renewed constantly, as it is with you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So what we've got to do is we just got to lift our chins a little higher and march off in the dawn and face the day and do the work.
You've traveled so many places. Is the rest of the world as wrong about these things as America seems to be?
Unfortunately, I have to say yes. Now, I just came back from Italy and from Finland, and my audiences, of course, are very receptive of what I've got to say, but then they will come to me with stories that just are heartbreaking about people who have fallen for the preachers, fallen for the anti-vaxxers, they've fallen for the faith healers and such, and it makes me a little despondent, but at the same time I have to think, well, I came all the way here. I gave a talk for a very large audience and on television, and I hope that it got across.
Yeah, I hope that the message gets through. Some thick skulls, and there are many of them. Now, one last thing I've got to ask you about. I have a 21-year-old daughter who you met at TAM a few years ago. I'm proud to say that she is a critical thinker, and there are many young women like her. I would love to see that the skeptical movement expanded to include more of them, and I wonder how we can do that to get more women into the skeptical movement. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I certainly do. And I must tell you that racial minorities and people from other countries around the world will be attending TAM this year, as they do every year. And when I get a counting of hands, how many people from Germany? And you see hands going up all over the place. France, Australia, wow. They come from all over the world to the amazing meeting. That's very encouraging to me, because that's my touchstone. That's what gives me the evidence that we are attracting people from literally all over the world and from many different social classes. Mm-hmm. And that is really so satisfying. I get a few tears in my eyes when I see that.
And there have been more women at the meetings in the last few years, right?
Oh yes, very much. And this is important too, Paul. Not just women who came because they're with their husbands. No, women who came there in many cases and dragged their husbands along. And that's very refreshing, too.
But I know that Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who are two of our great scientific thinkers in this country, have spent some time thinking about how we can get more girls and young women involved in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I would like to make it STEMS, put another S on there for skepticism. How do we do that?
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, we'll share the last S on there, I guess. But, no, you're absolutely right. And, by the way, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I spent a bit of time with him since the first time I met him at TAM. this is a character and a half.
Yep.
Has he been on your program?
I've never had a chance to have him on the radio, but about 3 weeks ago, he was here in St. Louis and played to a 3,000-person sold-out performance at the Peabody Opera House here in town. 3,000 people showed up essentially to watch a scientific lecture, and he spent, I'm not kidding, Randy, 3 hours on stage talking about science and science education, and it was one of the best nights I've ever had.
Oh, well, I tell you, when I first met Neil deGrasse Tyson, Dr. Tyson, pardon me,
yes.
I was just so excited at his presence, his personality, the charisma that he glows in the dark. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
I swear. And when he walked on the stage at TAM, there was dead silence. They had never quite seen anything as gigantic as this man in all his vest, his zodiacal vest. I particularly admire. And he took that audience by storm.
Yep.
He couldn't get off the stage at the end of it. He couldn't. They wouldn't let him off stage. It was just incredible. He's a great personality. He represents science, and the fact that he is at the Hayden Planetarium. I mean, come on. His office there is cluttered with everything you can imagine. Well, I could go on forever. But Neil deGrasse Tyson is a character and a half. I love him dearly. I hope that he's a good friend of mine. I'm a good friend of his, I can tell you that.
Well, the same can be said about you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you today, as it has been over the more than quarter century that I've known you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next month. AmazingMeeting.com is where you can get more information. You can also go to anhonestliar.com for the trailer for the biographical documentary about Randy's life, An Honest Liar, and you can also find out more about everything he's involved in by going to the website randy.org. That's the James Randi Educational Foundation website. Randy, thanks so much for joining me here today. I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yes, Paul. Looking forward to it with great enthusiasm. Thank you.
I'm Paul Harris. This is the Big 550 KTRS.
This is McGraw Live on KPLR 11.2, STLtoday.com, and the Big 550.